Chapter 10 ended with Samuel proclaiming Saul as king to all the tribes of Israel. But verse 27 records some who rejected him. Chapter 11 then provides a major exploit for Saul to prove his worthiness and answer his critics. The way that this story is told in chapter 11 could have come from the book of Judges. It begins with a description of oppression and then a cry for help. The Spirit of the Lord comes upon Saul and his anger is kindled. He rallies the tribes of Israel for war and, like Gideon, arranges his men into 3 groups. They attack during the first watch, which is somewhere between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m, but the narrator is otherwise uninterested in the details of the battle, save that Saul did as promised, which was deliver Jabesh Gilead by the heat of the day. The chapter ends with a call from Samuel to renew the kingship. Thus we see in these events the transition from the time of the judges to the time of the monarchy. If the narrator has been uninterested in the battle, it is worth considering what he was interested in. The enemy king, Nahash, which means snake, particularly enjoys humiliating Israel by gouging out the right eye. This had a practical purpose too, which was to inhibit fighting, because the left arm held the shield and covered the left eye, while the right eye looked past it with the weapon in the right hand. But the main point is degradation. We saw an example of this with Samson, whom the Philistines blinded. The offer of surrender from Jabesh Gilead is accepted only if they submit to an eye gouging first, so that they might be the more humiliated. This theme of humiliation is taken up again with Goliath, who repeatedly taunts Israel and their God. It is specifically because of these taunts that David knows he will kill him. Saul recruits forces from across Israel by threatening a curse with the pieces of oxen. By this we are reminded of the Levite and his concubine. Normally in holy war, the terror of the Lord falls upon the enemy, but in verse 7 it falls upon the Israelites, so that they come up as one for battle. The message from Jabesh Gilead to the Ammonites, promising surrender in verse 10, is ambiguous in its wording and is designed to bring a wry smile to the reader's lips. It looks like a promise to surrender, but it is actually a promise to fight. Chapter 11 ends with the renewing of Saul's kingship at Gilgal, with sacrifices and rejoicing, and it is at this occasion that Samuel delivers a speech, which is the content of verse 12. Although it sounds like a farewell and he mentions his age, Samuel is not about to die at this point. But in verse 2 he says, "See, it is the king who leads you now." He officially hands over the reins to Saul, from prophet to king. This does not mean, however, that he ceases to have a leadership role in Israel, as we shall soon see. In verses 3 to 5, Samuel challenges anyone to accuse him of dishonest leadership. This declaration of innocence asks for the public acknowledgement that it was not because of dishonesty or corruption that he has been rejected as leader of Israel. Moses gives a similar statement in Numbers 16 verse 15. But Samuel's innocence, where he placed no burden on the Israelites, will in time contrast with the king's behaviour, as he warned them in chapter 8 verses 11 to 18. The king will take whatever he wants and give it to his friends. Having briefly justified himself before all Israel, Samuel now justifies the Lord. He tells the Israelites to take their stand so that he might enter into judgment with them and the Lord. He begins his case by recounting the redemption of the Exodus, together with the leadership of Moses and Aaron, and then skipping over Joshua, moves into the period of the Judges. He notes in verse 9 that once they were settled in the land, their ancestors forgot the Lord. Oppression followed, but the Lord always delivered them. He once again emphasizes in verses 12 to 13 that it was they who asked for a king, even though the Lord was their king. Then, in Deuteronomic style, Samuel offers 2 ways to live: obedience or rebellion. Having made his case for the innocence of God in all this, he now asks for a great sign from God to confirm the Lord as witness to this courtroom scene. Verse 17 notes it is the wheat harvest, where a rainstorm would be unheard of. The people get the point and are terrified of both the Lord and Samuel, according to verse 18. They accept their sin in this matter and confess asking for a king was evil, thus vindicating the Lord and Samuel. Nevertheless, Samuel reassures them that he will continue to pray for them as prophet and that the Lord will not turn away from them. However, the final two verses of the speech, verses 24 and 25, once more offer the two paths from which they must choose, and so ends on a note of warning. With this speech, the first major section of 1 Samuel is concluded.